Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Matrix Dialogues. I'm your host, Austin Boozer, and we're back with another episode with just me. Something I'm not hugely a fan of, but we're making it work. Just gonna run through some kind of updates on things with me, and collectively just some of the ideas and thoughts that I guess just kind of live in me on the day-to-day, and just kind of talk through them with you guys. First one, I guess, I got this like buffing probably in frame as fuck. Let me move that. First thing, just came back from Colorado, spent some time in Denver for work, and then went over to Leadville to train a bit. For those who don't know, I'm preparing to run the Leadville 100 race this August, just a 100-mile race through the beautiful, quote-unquote beautiful, mountainous areas of Leadville, Colorado. It's one of the toughest 100-mile courses in the world. If 100 miles wasn't already fun enough, you do it at over 10,000 feet and climb to elevations of over 14,000 feet during the race. So exciting stuff. So anyway, in preparation for that, I wanted to make sure that I was ready, or that my training was actually moving in the right direction. So I knew I was going to Denver for work, so just plan to stay a few extra days to get some time there and to, again, just see where we were at. Training went really well. It's cold as fuck there. I mean, it reminds me why I hate the cold. Didn't have a day over freezing at all there. There's a lot of snow. Almost died while I was there as well. Got swallowed up in some snow where the route they told me to run on Strava I took, and I missed a turn, so I'd come back around to it, and it was just coming off of a trail back onto a main road, and I guess that area actually was pretty valleyed, but all I could see was it was snow covered, and so when I got 5 steps into it, the snow just kind of swallowed me up. So that was a bit terrifying, to say the least, but didn't die. Thought I was going to. Mild panic attack. We moved on. But anyway, outside of the almost dying, the training was good. Found some exposures to weakness in in the incline running area, even at 10,000 feet. While I was running and it was flat, it genuinely didn't really bother me too much. Again, saw us a 5 to 8 second pace, 5 to 8 second variation in pace to maintain normal heart rate, normal effort. So that was still in the mid 8s for me. But the moment it was time to get into more of an aerobic capacity, especially through running uphill, I immediately felt the limited oxygen capacity there. So with that knowledge being acquired, going to move forward with once a week, incorporating some incline treadmill stuff, just intervals of that, just to really again continue to have some exposure there. So that's really the only point I was I'd say disappointed maybe, or not quite as happy with the performance that I displayed, I guess. But overall, the runs were really good. Logged a little over 20 miles in 2.5 days there. Very happy with that. So that was cool. So just continuing to prepare for that. The first step of that probably is the most daunting. I've minimally mentioned it because I just don't want to talk about it a whole lot. Not in a hiding it kind of way, just in a am nervous and fearful way. So I initially tried to get into Leadville in the traditional way, which is where you just get lotteried in, or you essentially just sign up. But it's, despite Leadville being the hardest course, 100-miler, it's actually one of the most popular. So it fills up very quickly. I did not get into the lottery, and I missed the open sign-up window because I was a dummy and didn't read well. All that to be said is, so now, how are you going to get in? Oh, I'm getting there. I have to win the marathon in June, the end of June. I'll go to Leadville, and they have a trail marathon, also one of the harder marathons collectively in the U.S. Normal times are between 5 and 6 hours on this race. That's a normal time. If you're going to do it in even sub 5 hours, you're considered in the elite group. This is still a normal marathon, 26 miles, but I think there's about 5,000 or 6,000 feet of elevation gain throughout just a marathon, so a lot of uphill throughout this 13.1 out and back run. Yeah, but I have to win. I have to win that race to qualify to Leadville. Win the race or win your age group. Doing that in any Leadville-based course run guarantees you a spot in the 100. So I say I say a lot in life that I think things are only good. Or like the best things in life are the things that have the best stories. They have a good story, and it's not the thing that just happened for you. That was easy. It required work and commitment, and maybe a little bit of fear and despair along the way. So my whole mindset since I did not get into the lottery has been like, I'm just going to win this race. There was no other option for me, and at least in my eyes, like that was the thing that had to happen. I had to go, and will go win a race. Also because it just makes for a better story anyway. If I just talked to you guys in 6 months and was like, yeah, so I ran 100 miles today, like, I mean, that's a cool story still, not to knock that from anyone, but it's become an even cooler story now that I had to work. I'm simultaneously training to run a very hard marathon at still a very aggressive pace to win, and simultaneously while still adding mileage and preparing to run for the 100 miles because the 100-mile race is 6 weeks after the marathon. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's just in a big, while trying to lose weight, because I'm just a big dude right now. I'm still sitting at like 200 pounds currently. Still trying to lose about 10 more. But I was at 220 in December, so already cut down quite a bit of weight collectively, but still a little bit more to go to just have less weight to carry for the race. But yeah, really just excited about that and a little nervous. And again, we're just more excited about the story. So the fact that in a not so long time that the desired goal will be to say that I won a race, and that was the only way I got into it, is a cooler story and the cooler story to tell for the rest of my life than, yeah, I just signed up and did a race. Again, not knocking anyone who just signed up and did a race, but for me, I think the journey of our life is the story we get to tell. The hardships, the things that don't go well, the times we fail, that's the story you get to tell one day. And you either get to tell that it didn't work out the way you wanted, or that despite all that shit, you still made it happen anyway. And again, yeah, I'm just in the mindset of I'm going to win this race so that I can go to Leadville and I can run. So just going to kick through. So that's it on Leadville. I guess to summate that. Some other things I'm going to talk through in this episode are just, again, like my normal mind wrestling. So if you know me personally enough and we've had conversation, then this will probably sound just a lot like a conversation we may have had at some point ever. So hopefully I can kind of try and keep that authenticity to it. I've been listening to a really good podcast lately. I know, irony, right? You're listening to a podcast while I'm simultaneously talking about listening to a podcast. With, shocker, Chris Williams, and I don't know how you say Naval's last name. Rivakant, I don't know, but I can't say it. That's all I know. If you don't know Naval, great investor, entrepreneur, not a philosopher by trait, I guess you'd say, or by practice, but very philosophical in life and wisdom-based. And I listened to that episode with him and Chris, and it was just created a lot of it stirred up a lot of internal introspection for me. And some of those things I'm going to kind of just talk through my thoughts. And again, I don't have someone here with me. I'm going to try and approach it as if I was bouncing this off someone else. The reason to win the game is to be free of it. And to me, it's very interesting to think about that idea that if you know you can win the game, that is the freedom. And so what are the downstream byproducts of that? If I win the game when I'm not a slave to it anymore, I'm not bound by it, it doesn't control my life or me or the thoughts that I have, the emotions that I generate internally on a daily basis. But what if the cost of winning the game is too high? It was maybe be an easy rebuttal from someone, or how do I know this is the game that I actually want to play? I think that ties back into the need of knowing yourself and knowing if this actually is something you want to do. They also talk a lot about dual modes of happiness. Like there's two simple approaches to happiness, which is the one through working to achieving and accomplishing things in life, or the one of just kind of existing, like, hey, I can just be grateful that I'm here. And again, you have to know what kind of person you are. Some people can just hang out and be blessed and feel grateful and be appreciative of just having the pleasure of living life. But I think most of us can't do that. I think most of us do have a hunger or an inkling or a desire for a little bit more in our life. And that's okay that you have that, but it's just about what you're going to do with it and getting really focused about what the game that you're willing to play or to attempt to win at is, so that you can devote that time and energy to it, because there's only so much you can be good at in life, and trying to play multiple games at the same time is just going to have you frustrated because you're not really succeeding at any of them. Not wanting something is as good as having it. It was a complex idea that I don't know, surprised me, because I'm always enamored by the simplicity of some of these things that make so much sense. By saying that, the idea that it really getting good at, let me backtrack, the idea that why can not wanting something be as good as having it is because then we as people are really singularly focused in the way of, we are on this pursuit to acquire something, and getting things isn't the same as having things. We already have a lot of things as people, but what do you want? Like, the want for more creates the pursuit, and that is the fulfilling, exciting part of the endeavor in itself anyway. And so if you can, again, by knowing yourself, really get super specific about what you want. If you can just alleviate or knock things off your list of things that you think you want and say, oh, I don't want them. Well, that is the same feeling of neutrality as like, oh, I have it. Like, you're kind of neutral to it now. There's no desire for it anymore. And so it can actually open up greater desire for the things that you actually want, which can then generate that willpower, that focus, that drive, that hunger for it. And again, like, if I'm trying to play 10 games at once, I'm probably going to be bad at all 10 of them, rather than if I'm hyper-focused on one game, there's a high likelihood that I can be very good at that game. And inversely with your wants, if you get really super focused on what your wants are, you can very easily make sure that you're not pursuing things you don't want, or achieve it and find out, oh, like, I actually really don't give a shit about this. But again, I think that's a dual problem of the complexity of having versus achieving. You know, the pursuit of acquiring something is much more fulfilling than the accomplishment of then getting it. You know, like, all the hard work you do to get the promotion is more validating and fulfilling than the promotion itself most times, because you get the promotion, then you get used to it. Because when we acquire things, like, we get used to that style of life, that level of wealth, and then we're like, I'm bored, I want more, right? And so then we begin pursuing whatever is next, more wealth, a new promotion, a better car, like, whatever it is, because that's our I guess what demise as people is, that we do just have this ability to get used to things so rapidly, and then this hunger for newness and something different arises rapidly in us, and then we feel the need to fulfill that. Again, multiple paths to happiness. Again, that one I briefly touched on. That the idea that we can be happy and then there's the way they mentioned it was two main ways to acquire happiness. Again, meaning that you can do it by pursuing success, and then, or the other one, which is by just being grateful for kind of existing, kind of being an aesthetic per se in life. Again, but in which one of those you want to do, again, I think just requires you to know yourself. Are you the person who could just sit around and just be content because you're happy that the sun's hitting your face today? It doesn't mean you have a lack of gratitude if that's not you, but you know, you have to know which one you could be. If you can't sit on the couch and just chill and kick it every day, then don't try to sit on the couch and kick it every day. Like, why set yourself up in that position to kind of be miserable? So yeah, I think, again, a lot of things, listen to the show, you'll hear me say it a lot, but knowing yourself is still, to me, one of the single-handedly most important things we can do as people. Because by knowing yourself, you're able to know what you do want. But I think what encompasses in knowing yourself is more important than being able to know what you don't want. That's an easier predictor of life. because knowing what we want as people is so challenging and so difficult. I'll give you some examples of if I said, what will make you happy? You could probably sit on that and maybe muster up something. But if I said, well, what will make you unhappy? You could rapid fire me about 50 things that would make you pretty unhappy. So it's much easier for us as people to know what we don't like. If I said, well, what kind of boss would you like? And you're like, well, I don't know. I said, what kind of boss do you not like? And he said, well, the one who's going to micromanage me and sit on my shoulder and like nitpick every little thing I do. And it's like, oh yeah, see, exactly. So by looking at the things you don't like or don't want, you're able to generate and have this idea to move towards the things you do want in any environment, whether that be with your work, with your career, with a partner. And so if you really find yourself struggling to go, oh, I don't know what I want, well, then just start making a list of the things you don't want. And then, again, by process of elimination, you'll only be left with the things that you would be okay with or would want. Most of the games we play, we suffer in the short term to get paid in the long term. And I think that just feels like I've called them before, like a fundamental truth of life. Like there is a certain amount of suffering, if you will, required for anything. That the idea of delayed gratification is just that. Like I'm going to put off something I would enjoy now for something I know I will enjoy more later. Right? I think it's just a different approach to that same idea. The idea of suffering is something also that I've been trying to separate out a bit more within myself, because a lot of people say like, oh, like I'm willing to suffer for things, and again, suffering has two dimensions as well. There's the physical suffering, like I'm actually in pain, like something hurts me, I'm suffering. And then there's the more common version of suffering that most people reference, which is the mental, emotional version of suffering, which, at least in my own life, I'm finding is a little bit more self-generated than outside generated. I think I am probably a larger proponent of my own suffering than most things, whether that be I make myself upset or I allow myself to stay upset. In areas of my life, and that's something that I don't want to do. I want to be able to rather than looking back on the moment and being like, oh man, those times were really great. It's like, that's really what I should have felt when I was in the moment in the first place. But I thought that I had to suffer for it, or didn't deserve to feel anything then, or numbed myself, or again made it harder for myself than it had to be, so that when I look back on it in hindsight, I'm like, oh, this was really like that. Those were the golden years. Those were the great times, and that just means that I robbed myself of feeling that in the moment, because I know, like, I could be honest with myself that right now I feel like, man, I'm just constantly in this state of stress or frustration about all the things and all the tasks that I'm taking on and all the work that I'm doing. And, if in 20 years I look back on it and go, man, that was the good stuff. Like, it can be my indicator that that's what I should have felt then. But I was too busy making myself upset or feeling like I had to be in this state of suffering to continue forward when actually I didn't. But I've become the own cause of my own problems in those ways. And it's been intimidating to stomach and swallow again. That like you are actually the thing that's making you the most miserable, rather than it being the trivial time or the workload or the tiff in your relationship at this time. Like maybe it's just you. Maybe you're the thing that's generating the problem. And also that the anger and the suffering isn't necessary. I think that's another one that I'm grappling with holistically. Because the journey is the only thing. Like, again, never a point of arrival. Like, do we ever fully arrive at anything? Like, you always could be more aware, more focused, more loving, more genuine, more caring, more humorous. Like, there will always be a more of. There will always be a surplus that could be acquired or attained. And to have any of that, that is the journey. Like, this idea that arriving is, what do we arrive at? I think there are certain things we can, like, I'm a place of content, maybe, like I make enough money, I'm okay here, but then you still wouldn't stop pursuing, like, doing things you enjoyed. It just wouldn't be about money anymore. So the idea that the journey is the thing that is your life, not this, when I get to this point, when I get to this, it'll feel great. And maybe it will feel better, but again, know that you will get used to it, and then you'll get bored of it, and there will be something else that you may want to do, or that you'll be like, well, why doesn't it feel like it used to? Because you got used to it. Just to kind of tie all those things in together. Another one that's been pretty prevalent social media wise is someone who has a very, very small and irrelevant showcasing in the digital world, but I've talked about this idea with a couple of people. I think this is the problem of social media, maybe, and even a little bit on the political side, is that the struggle around changing your mind and changing your opinion. Something I did not expect when I started a podcast was that my words were going to be, obviously recorded, but that they were going to be able to be referenced back later. So if in 6 months I say something disagreeing with my current day self, someone could be like, see, like, you're a fraud, it looks a lot like hypocrisy on the internet. And again, that's because I think a lot of us have our bullshit meters turned up really high, because a lot of times in life, most of its cases, that's a pretty valid thing to have arrived upon, is that someone is bullshitting or faking or not being genuine, lying for short. But our whole life, our ideas are changing. Like, we're gaining new knowledge, new experience, and new perspective every day. You should be, at least in my opinion. And so the idea that your thoughts or your viewpoints or your opinions wouldn't change, it's kind of crazy to live in that idea that, well, no one's opinions are ever going to change. Again, even on a political scale, like, oh, well, they said this before, and they're saying this now. Like, well, people can't change their mind. Now, the caveat to that is you have to do it in a manner in which actually makes sense. So if I say, hey, I thought blue was a bad color, right? And now I say, well, blue's my favorite color. I need to be able to give an objective why. Either something happened, or I experienced something, or I learned something about the color blue that really shaped my opinion differently to it. So that now I'm like, I actually do like blue. As to where maybe before I was like, hey, I hate the color blue, right? And now you can apply that to a political idea, a social idea, whatever you want to do. And again, if someone can reference a why, again, that's not disingenuous. It's like our opinions are always changing. Our thoughts, our reality is quite literally just changing. And it is a bit of a landmine, or a field of mines per se, of while maintaining a internet presence on. There is some fear in stating how you feel. It's like, just say how you feel. Just say how you feel. It's like, till you do, and then it's like, wow. First of all, why do you think that or feel that way? But then, two, but you said this before. And again, if everyone's words were recorded all the time and then able to be pulled back upon them at any given moment, they would probably likely suffer from the same issue, that they've said things one way and now holistically are saying it differently. And again, most people would do that with no reason, and that's the issue. So that's, I think, again, why we all have this hypersensitivity to call it hypocrisy, or well, you said this and now you're doing that. So there's a discrepancy there. Even though, again, in our own lives, if we really had our own words thrown back at us enough, we'd realize we too do the same thing. Some people on a day-to-day, hour, minute basis, they'll say one thing and do the other. So it's just an interesting thing to navigate. And I did not expect to gain such mindfulness and intentionality behind the things I say because of a podcast, because someone now can listen to something I did 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago, or, however long ago, and be like, hey, but you said this before, and now you're saying something that may not align with that. Again, just thinking about having a why is the important part there. Naval said something really powerful that I just can't get words right, apparently, because he made it sound so Rico Suave, so perfect, if you will. And he said, like, all learning is just error correction, making a guess and correcting your errors, which means we're mostly just always wrong. And that is simply, like we're all just playing error correction. Like, how do you learn anything? Like, you just correct the things that are wrong until you figure it out. In my last episode with Jeff, I talked about this, how that you're wrong every time until you're right, and then you're wrong again, because you're able to, in that domain that you were wrong, you're now right, but now you're in a new domain, so you were at level 6, and now you finally got level 6 right, and then you try to apply that same skill set or approach to level 7, and you're failing because now you have to correct your error again. I don't know, I just thought it was a very unique way to say it and present it, because I feel like I say the same thing all the time, but just not said that well. So learning is just error correction, and most of the time we're making a guess. And tying that back to the people calling you out on being wrong, things like, I got him in this thing, that if someone's making a guess or just taking a stab at something, I think this is what will happen in X amount of time in this thing if these variables work out a certain way, and then it doesn't work out that way, and they're like, I got you, see, you're a fraud. And it's like, that's just a guess. I didn't know, I didn't, So, again, that's not, I didn't lie. I wasn't like, this thing is going to, I didn't come saying I was a time traveler. Hey, on next Tuesday at 2:37, XYZ is going to happen, okay, well, then that would be false, obviously. But just to take a guess at something and try to lead with some, I don't know, just some level of understanding that we're all just getting it wrong all the time and correcting our own errors. Whether you're a kid or an adult, the idea that you'll never know it all. You couldn't know it all anyway, but you wouldn't want to, and you're constantly just learning and making corrections to the errors that you make. This one is a pretty interesting concept, is the idea that who should you demand respect from? Who are the people that you should, where to place that effort on? Whose opinion, Jesus Christ, excuse me. Whose opinion do I validate? Who do I care about if I have their respect or not? And that, what I can tell you from at least my own experience, is that list should be very short. The amount of people who you should put real weight or stock into caring about what they say should be a very hyper-select few people. One, because if you care what everyone thinks, it's going to be a miserable life, because you're never going to appease or make everyone happy. Hell, even the finite group of people who you do, care or respect their opinions of you, you're not going to make all of them happy all the time either. That's why it's more important to be okay with yourself and make sure that, hey, I'm okay with this choice. I made this decision and I'm okay with that. But also just can make you suffer a very miserable life in people pleasing, trying to make, even if you do have a select few people who you care about and respect their opinion of you, trying to just please them rather than yourself can lead to a life that's maybe not quite the life you would want to have. And as Naval said, that trying to demand respect from the masses is a fool's errand. Meaning, if you're just trying to get respect from everyone, you're foolish. It's never going to happen. So don't expect to. It's a losing game. You can't win it. They also talked a lot about status games and how, historically we've played a lot of status games in the world. It's fame is a status game, right? But the problem with a status game is there's a very minimal amount of status, right? Only one person can be number one. You can't have 5 people to be number one. Only one person can be number one in any given domain, right? There's one number one podcast in the world. There's one, hit song on the Billboard right now. And for someone else to go up, someone else to go down. So for someone else to become number one, that person would have to fall out of number one. They wouldn't just get to stay there. I just found that interesting. That we historically have been competing over status throughout time, right? And usually that status is acquired by what you would do for others. You had to create some status for yourself by, I take care of the village, or I take care of my family, then take care of the village, and maybe help the village win the war and find peace, or whatever it was. You acquired status through the things you did holistically through or for others. And just understanding now that we're shifting in society to with wealth creation games and creating wealth, that we're no longer in this mitigated minimal, there is no status. Games are zero sum. You're either number one or you're not, right? And that's it. And there's only a finite amount of status. But with wealth creation games, it's infinite sums. I can generate money that can help generate money for you, and then we can both have wealth and both be successful. And then, I mean, people always want what they don't have, right? So if you do get good at wealth creation, then obviously you're probably going to want status. And we see it all the time where people achieve success and make money, and then they go and want status, right? Again, because status is more finite. But it just was an interesting concept to sit with and wrestle with, and then look in my own life and go, where am I competing for status? Like, what things do I do that gear towards I want some level of status for something? And again, that just was an idea that I hadn't spent a whole lot of time with, and so that was interesting. They talked about self-esteem as well. I think this one will be viable for anyone, because it was a new perspective. I think I've often said historically that self-esteem is just keeping the promises you make to yourself. Like, if you find yourself to be lacking in self-esteem, maybe you don't keep the promises you make to you. Maybe you don't do the things you say you're going to do. Obviously, that would generate a lack of esteem in oneself because you aren't the person that you claim to be. You say, I'm going to do these things, and you don't. And you're with you all the time, so you know exactly who you are. Maybe you're not that kind of person. You aren't the person who does what they say. You don't keep the word you make. You don't follow through on things. And so, yeah, it would be really hard to trust oneself if that was the way we lived every day. But Naval presented this different idea to it, and he said another idea or another issue that could generate a lack of self-esteem is you don't live up to the standards you hold others to. And I just had never considered that as a thing that could negate one's self-esteem. And as I in real time sit here and like really try and break that down and go like, what does that mean? And how could that potentially affect oneself? So if I'm holding someone to a standard that I inversely can't meet, like, how could that be a detriment to me? Well, because then one, I don't know, you would probably increase some level of guilt because you know you can't do the thing that you're asking someone else to do. But then you would think in other avenues, well, obviously maybe you can't do it. That's why you're trying to have them do it. So then what guilt do you feel about that? Like, if someone says, like, you hire someone to do something and they can't do it, well, why would I feel bad about them not being able to do it? How would that generate, like, negatively take away from my self-esteem? Maybe because then you're doubting your judgment. This person said they could do something. I thought they were qualified. Like, I looked at potential candidates. I made this selection on this person and it didn't work out. I don't know. It's one that it's an interesting point of view that, again, I'm like actively trying to wrap my mind around all of it. He gave more examples than that, obviously. I haven't listened to the podcast in 4 days, so my brain's a little absent on the rest of it. But just, I don't know, it's something interesting to sit with as well in that way. Let's see, what are some of the other ones I really wanted to... Ooh, this one was crazy. It's like pride being the most expensive trait. Like having pride can cost you everything, because most people who are innately prideful have an inability or unwillingness to learn or to gain new skills, to gain new perspective, to gain new knowledge. And so in that way where change is inevitable and guaranteed, it is the only guarantee that things will change. The way that you won today may serve you for a certain amount of time, but it won't be the way that you could win forever. You know, though three-pointers are big in basketball right now, like the game will evolve differently. Like, it may go back to like spot up twos and like a lot of in the paint play. Like, you know, I mean, it just, the way things are now, like, will not be that way forever. Right? People will get good at defending threes at some point, and unless you can just like close your eyes and shoot, which no one can essentially to an effective level of like effectivity, then like the game is always changing. Like, right, blogs were cool. Now we've got social media. Like, things changed. It's still the internet, but like what is prevalent has changed. It used to be like long form content was really popular, and now like the things that really generate the most attention are like really short consumable content because it's easy to access collectively. That doesn't mean people still don't watch long form videos, but like we see it historically. Why does every platform have YouTube has shorts, TikTok has TikTok? TikTok kind of created that short form thing. Instagram has reels, like, because the things have evolved. Like the main consumption avenue has changed. Like people only used to get their news through the newspaper, and then it became actually through the news channels, and now everybody gets their news from wherever. It's really not the news channel anymore, but change is inevitable. What makes you happy today may not make you happy in 6 months or 6 years. So the idea that pride can, just because you're winning in an avenue of something in your life right now doesn't mean that that's always what's going to win or always what's going to work. And again, if it's working, that doesn't mean it needs to be changed. But it's kind of the phrase like, what got you here won't get you there, right? So at some point things will change. You will have to adapt. You'll have to gain a new skill. You'll have to move as the world shifts, the market shifts. Like, you will have to shift with it, or you will get left behind. The business that was the best business in the world 30 years ago isn't the best business today. Sears used to be a great company. They said Amazon who, right? No, Sears doesn't exist anymore. So for the children who are young and don't know what that company is, you could just look it up. They used to sell washers and shit. And they sold a lot more than that. But again, just anyway there, that pride can be a mitigator for success, because of your unwillingness to think or recognize that you have a need for new knowledge or well, I'm winning right now. Why do I need to know anything else? You won't always be winning. One day you will need to know something else in order to continue to win. Don't let pride kind of maybe ruin that for you. How do you show up and be be yourself? What does being authentic really mean? This one is very personal for me, because I think we all struggle with some level of wanting to be seen as something smarter, fitter, more capable than we are. Maybe because we have some doubt of it ourselves, or because we've been told we couldn't or weren't ever going to be. And so we emulate what we've seen or what is accredited to success. Like, I want to be really good at business. I see how this person does business. I want to be just like them because they won. So if I do what they've done, I will win and I will be good. And the phrase of you can only be the second best someone else, but you can always be the best you, is something that lives rent-free in my head all the time. Even if you're really great, you can only be the second best someone else. You can only be second best, but you can always be the best version of you. Like, no one can be you better than you. And I think, so what is authenticity? What is, being authentic, being your authentic self really mean? It's just do the things that actually, with knowing yourself, are you. Don't do things that you don't want to do. Don't say things that you don't actually believe to be true or agree with. And though it's good to have points of reference in domains of, this is how this entrepreneur did it, like, I can take things from them, but realize that a phrase I've said before is you're going to have to fit it to you. Like, you can take ideas or behaviors or traits from that person and go that trait is good to have because it can help me. Like, perseverance is great because when I want to quit, I won't. Right? So I should be able to persevere. I should have resilience because I'll be able to continue going. And I see that these people that I admire or respect, or look up to, they have these traits, and I need to have those traits. But that doesn't make you them. Like, these traits are not zero sum. It's not just only one person can have the trait of resilience or determination or drive. Like, anyone can have those and still be themselves. So you don't have to become someone else because you like attributes of them. So you can still take those attributes, fit them to you, and still be yourself. And so that, to me, if I had to sum up what I think true authenticity looks like, is just, we're all learning, right? We all have a mentor or someone we're looking up to, admire, we want to be like, but then still being you. Like, be you. And that requires you to figure out what that is. And any creator that I've seen that I've admired genuinely, they say it took them, 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years to actually figure out how to just be themselves. And then it's crazy that when they actually finally became themselves, that's when things really started to work for them or grow or whatnot. Again, because that's the best you, is the one that's actually yourself, not your play at someone else or your attempt to be like someone that you admire. Again, it's good to, they say emulating someone's a form of flattery. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but just being able to really hone in on who you are and present that to the world, and not because it worked for someone else, or you want some level of status, acknowledgement. It doesn't mean that doing something for that reason is bad, but like if it's your reason, not someone else's reason. Like, my favorite singer said broccoli's bad, so I'm never eating broccoli. Like, well, what if you like broccoli? Then you should probably eat it. That's you being authentic, not, again, that's a very loose example, but just to try to make that simple for someone. I think probably the last thing I'll cover here is something I have been trying to understand a bit more, which is the curse of competency versus the curse of complacency. And I'll break down both of them a little bit. And the curse of competency really is for those individuals who are aware, who have more knowledge, they're above average in knowledge or intellect, and they wrestle with the idea of, why doesn't everyone else see it? Why don't they see that you should work hard and you should get up early and you should do the hard things? And why does everyone, if you're 21 years old and you don't enjoy going out or partying or drinking or doing any of those things, you're like, why is everyone in my age, they just don't get it? Like, oh. It's like, well, maybe you have the curse of competency, right? Like, you had the ability, or life forced you to grow up a little bit at a more rapid rate, and so you gained a level of perspective and maturity that at 21 is uncommon. And so now you're dealt with the curse of competency, like, because you are able to see the world differently because you have different experiences than the majority of people. That doesn't make it bad or wrong. It just means that, yes, you will then probably be in a different or see the world differently, holistically, than most of your peers for a good majority of your life, maybe if not always. So then you'll have to scale up to friends who are maybe a bit older, or whatever the case is in that way. And the curse of complacency is, I guess, simply, quote unquote, the inverse of that, where maybe you have some inkling of more or different, but you can't make yourself do anything about it. Like, you're content with, hey, my friends want to go out, let's go out. They want to have a drink, let's have a drink. These guys that I used to smoke weed with want to smoke some weed, so we're going to smoke some weed. Like, you have the curse of complacency. And I think both envy the other. Like, people who are competent view and envy the people who are complacent. Or like, man, if I could just cut it off, if I just didn't have to see it all and understand it and get it and see why I actually should do these things, or like, they've just got it so easy. They don't have to have the full picture, and they don't get it, and what a life that must be. But if you really sit with that, maybe it's not so nice, because they don't even know that life's passing them by. They're not really amounting to anything, or that the drinking or the drugs or the sex is actually not as fulfilling as they'd think. And maybe they don't even have the ability to know what they want, because they don't even think about that. Do I actually want to do this thing? Do I actually enjoy it? Or have I just let society or my friend group or my social circle define what I like, or what I'm willing to say is okay or normal? So I don't know, maybe that person that you're envying is, if you are someone who's competent and you're viewing someone who's complacent, it's actually maybe not as great as you'd think. And inversely, if you're complacent, you're probably not listening to this podcast, respectfully, but if you are, and you view that person as like, they've just got it all figured out, or things just work for them, like, you just got it all, you got it all figured out, you got all the answers, life just is easier for you. It's not. We live in a constant state of uncertainty and risk-taking, and perpetually are unsure, uncertain, fearful if it will work or if it is good enough. And yeah, I don't know. That's one that I consistently wrestle with, the idea of which one is worse to have and which one would I rather have. Despite, obviously, I feel I have the curse of competency, unfortunately, but again, just trying to assess what if it is worth untangling. That was another thing that I sat with. Those who don't know, I go to therapy, very open about that, but that there's a certain level of trauma that, at least for me, I find myself always trying to go, like, I need to know exactly where it came from. What is the thing that caused this, that caused, if I'm at P, I want to track it all the way back to A. This was the thing that started it all for me. And the realization that maybe untangling it will cost you more effort and more time and more resources than benefit you would get from untangling it. Just sometimes it's okay to look at something and go, hey, I have this thing here, and I have to live with that. Because the amount of time and effort it would take you to ever get to a point where you could deal with it or could manage it would be so much more than what you would actually get out of it. Like knowing when to, as the K-Camp song says, cut it. But there is a time and place for it. Knowing that, like, hey, I can acknowledge I have this thing and it's there, and I just have to figure out how to move forward with my life. And there's a reference from I believe King Arthur, where they said, the one who will be able to untie this knot will have all the wisdom or the knowledge, and King Arthur just cuts it. Like, he literally with his sword just cuts the knot and says, "There, I untangled it." And just again, like that idea of sometimes just acknowledging it and being able to continue forward and knowing again where to place your efforts on if it's actually going to serve you. Is it worth figuring out? Again, just things to sit with and think about. So, well, everyone, I hope this one was less painful than the first time I did this a couple months ago. But thank you for tuning into another episode of Matrix Dialogues, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.